It was the morning of the 14th of September, 1964, in Albany, New York. Neighbors on Colony Street awoke to an ordinary Tuesday. Cars heading off to work, kids catching school buses, doors closing behind housewives and their errands. At number 117 Colony Street, a tidy home with flower boxes and freshly painted shutters, 50-year-old Catherine Blackburn had invited a prospective tenant to view the upstairs apartment she was renting. She was a forewoman at a brush manufacturing company, respected in her community, quietly divorced and living on her own. The day began with promise, only it would end with violence and decades of unanswered questions. Inside her home, Catherine was attacked. Later investigators found that she had been bludgeoned in the back of the head, stabbed in the neck, sexually assaulted, and burned on the lips and chest with heated objects. Her apartment was not burglarized. Her door showed no forced entry. Nothing obvious seemed missing. The brutality suggested motive far beyond theft. Evil had entered her house that day, an unknown man, unseen, shamefully intimate in his savagery. 61 years ago, evil entered my aunt's house and changed our lives forever, her niece would later say. The detective file from 1964 is full of photographs. Catherine lying on the floor of her home, a single handkerchief found beneath her body, a footprint in the garden, a rent receipt stub with the name Robert Broadhead scrawled on it, yet that name led nowhere. Her home, her neighborhood, her life, all turned upside down. The crime scene was handled with professionalism for its time. Gloves were used, prints were taken, but forensic science, in the 1,960 seconds, lacked many of the tools we take for granted today. No advanced DNA testing, no genetic genealogy, only paper files, witness statements, narrow leads. For decades, the case sat cold. Catherine's family, her community, never let her fade into a mere statistic. They held memorials, pressed police quietly for updates, watched anniversaries pass. The house on Colony Street remained a quiet marker of what happened. In school corridors, in church pews, people referenced the case with a whisper. Remember Catherine Blackburn? It served as a cautionary tale. A woman living alone, an invitation to a stranger, a checklist unwritten. The fear of the unseen and unknown lingered. In 2018, Detective Melissa Morey of the Albany Police Department's Forensic Investigative Unit stumbled upon the old file. She was accustomed to cold cases, but this one held something rare: an intact crime scene file, preserved evidence, still sealed envelopes. The handkerchief beneath Catherine's body, the footprint, the rent receipt, they were still available. She reached out to the Criminal Investigation Resource Center at Russell Sage College, led by Dr. Christina Lane, and together, they embarked on a new approach. The idea was not simply to reopen the case, but to apply modern forensic methods: genetic genealogy, forensic-grade DNA extraction, cross-database matching. The tools now existed that didn't in 1964. In 2024, the preserved handkerchief was submitted to a specialist lab in Texas, and scientists successfully extracted DNA from the decades-old fabric. With the DNA profile in hand, the FBI's forensic genetic genealogy team began constructing family trees, scanning public genetic databases, and narrowing possible suspects. The breakthrough came when relatives of a man named Joseph Stanley Nowakowski, born in 1931 and died in 1998, submitted DNA. Investigators obtained a court order, exhumed his body in September 2025, and tested his DNA. It matched the sample from the crime scene. The man who tortured and murdered Catherine Blackburn had a name. Nowakowski was 33 years old when Catherine died. He had a long criminal history: burglaries, weapons possession, a 1,973 assault on an elderly woman in Schenectady with a hatchet. Yet he was never a suspect in 1964. He lived under the radar, died in 1998, and swiftly seemed destined for anonymity. Until the technology caught up, there is no such thing as a cold case, Albany Police Chief Brendan Cox declared at the news conference. For Catherine's family, it was a moment of enormous relief. Tears and prayers for over 6 decades had not been wasted. Even so, the identification does not bring the full closure one might hope for. The trial will never happen. The man is dead. But the truth exists, and that matters. The niece, now in her 80s, said simply, "We prayed for this day. To all who made this possible, may God bless you. Catherine's memory moves from a question mark to a named event. Her name stands above the rest. What remains important is the path that led to this resolution. The quiet, meticulous work from 1,964 detectives whose notes stayed intact, the university criminologists who paired academia with law enforcement, the forensic scientists who squeezed DNA from near-decayed cloth, the persistence of family and friends who never let her name die. The house on Colony Street, the handkerchief, the footprint, each remained part of an unbroken chain of evidence. On a cold winter's morning in Rhode Island, investigators faced two unsolved murders, separated by more than 2 decades, yet joined by the same frustration. Victims whose names echoed in empty files, and families who lived in limbo. One woman was found in her apartment in 2007, another vanished in 1984, only for her body to be discovered days later. Their stories are distinct, their timelines distant, but their ending today carries a common truth. After years of silence, answers arrived. Cynthia McKenna was 49 years old and living in North Providence when her life was shattered. On the 21st of February 2007, the apartment manager of her Waterman Avenue building found her unresponsive in bed. What they discovered was both horrific and intimate. Cynthia was tucked tightly into her bed, 2 pillows placed over her face, a sock stuffed into her mouth, and tissues stuffed into her nostrils. The medical examiner determined the cause of death to be asphyxia due to obstruction of the airway by a foreign body. Her apartment showed no obvious forced entry. The crime was personal, internal, and chilling. Cynthia had been in a volatile relationship with a man named Robert J. Corey Jr. She had filed domestic violence charges against him in 2005, and she claimed he owed her money. She referred to him by a nickname, Gunner. According to the investigation, she was at odds with him. In 2007, a letter surfaced, apparently confessing to her murder, addressed to one of Corey's associates. Handwriting analysis confirmed the writing was his, but at the time, DNA testing could not definitively tie it to him because his profile was never uploaded into a criminal database. That letter remained a haunting clue until advances in forensic technology made it speak again. In the spring of 2024, investigators used YSTR testing, comparing male relative DNA with the envelope and samples, and were able to link the writing and DNA to Corey's male lineage. Suddenly, what was once a suspicion became nearly certain. Corey killed Cynthia. He died in 2014, so no trial will ever happen, but the truth could finally be spoken. Cynthia's voice was silent for nearly 18 years, but today, her name stands beside the man who took her life. Now let's travel back to the summer of 1984. On the 2nd of September 1984, the body of 4-year-old Deborah Stone was recovered from the Narrow River in Narragansett, Rhode Island. Her body was wrapped in a floral sleeping bag and weighted down with a cinder block, an act of calculated concealment. For decades, the case remained perplexing and unresolved. Deborah had last been seen on August 29, visiting an apartment in Johnston belonging to a man named Robert D. Garamia. He claimed Deborah died of an overdose, but the autopsy revealed strangulation, not overdose. According to an informant, Garamia said he had to kill Deborah because she was stealing from him. Investigators at the time lacked enough compelling evidence to proceed. The files grew cold. Over the years, witness memory faded, suspects died or moved, and funds for cold case work were limited. Both families lived under the weight of unknowns. For the McKenna family, each birthday without a call, each holiday without a hug. For the Stone family, each anniversary a reminder of absence and unanswered questions. These two women became part of Rhode Island's quiet landscape of lost lives and a testing ground for the power of persistence. In 2023, the Rhode Island Attorney General's office launched a dedicated cold case unit. Its mission: revisit the files, reopen the files, breathe fresh air into dead investigations. The unit pulled out the McKenna and Stone cases. They re-interviewed witnesses, scanned evidence, employed modern forensic genetics, and refused to treat the word old as an excuse. For Cynthia's case, the stabbing at the apartment, the suffocation, the letter, all were re-examined under the lens of 21st century science. For Deborah's, the sleeping bag and cinder block, the river dump, the informant's statement, the murder scene evidence, everything was reopened. For Deborah, investigators interviewed 32 witnesses over 11 months. The informant's 1,984 statement remained consistent. They found then, and there is now, more than sufficient evidence to charge and convict the suspect. Although he died in 1995, the conclusion came. Robert Garemia murdered Deborah Stone. For Cynthia, the writing, the DNA, the relationship all coalesced into the conclusion. Robert Corey Jr. murdered Cynthia McKenna. The case is closed, answers delivered. What the investigators said at the press conference captures the moment. Today, we close the cases surrounding the deaths of Cynthia and Deborah. And by doing so, we hope their families can finally feel a sense of closure. For the families, the breakthrough did not erase the loss, but freed their grief from limbo. The daughter of Cynthia said, "Her life mattered and always will." The chief of Narragansett Police remarked for Deborah. For over 4 decades, Deborah's family remained without answers. Through re-examining evidence, we delivered answers for all who loved her.